If you love Baltimore sports, you'll love WNST.net.
Good. I guess one of the toughest decisions in all the years was the move from Brian to John. Criticism, some fans happy, some fans are always happy to fire a coach. I think we're all into that.
It's called sacrificial lambs.
Exactly. But that decision that you made, I know it was painstaking, agonizing, but then you had to go find the next guy. And it was so funny. I ran into Jason Garrett last night with John. Yeah. There was no secret about Jason Garrett coming in and the other people. But you selected John, and obviously, I guess the Indiana Jones thing is what, choose wisely, right? Choose wisely. 4 years later, 4 playoff years, 4 wins every year. I don't think anyone in the world could question that decision. So what was it about John that made him the right guy in your mind? And now he's seen it through.
Well, you know what? It wasn't a singular decision because I put the best minds in the team together to find these guys out. And I think it was Eric DaCosta that brought him into the list when we just started building the list. And they were kind of fascinated with him. And then actually down the line, it was Bill Belichick actually called me and said, I understand you're interviewing John Harbaugh, and I have to tell you, he's one of the brightest guys I've ever met. And I said, really? And he said, yeah, we sit together at the Combine every year. And he said, and let me tell you something, I don't waste my time with people that can't teach me something. And he said, John, it never fails that John teaches me something. I thought that was a very humble thing for Bill to say. And he said, look, I don't have any skin in this game.
He just called you out of the blue. He just called to endorse someone he respected.
And just said, I just want you to know that this obscure guy is not so obscure in league circles. They see him as an up-and-comer. And I have personal relationship with the guy, and I think he's ready. I think he's right.
What has he done that you saw the first time that 4 years later, what you saw in him then?
You know, just his inquisitiveness. You know, he's kind of the opposite of a know-it-all. It's like he is engaging. He is just constantly interested in what I think of the subject, what Ozzie thinks of that subject, what Dick thinks of that subject, what Kevin Byrne thinks about that subject. And that's not changed. That's what's so special about him, is that he doesn't seem like he's even, like he's got the I got it now in his makeup. I don't think he's got that feeling, that term in his makeup.
Sometimes when you get it, it changes anyway, right?
Well, I think at a certain point when you say that you've got it, that means that you are closed to learning. And I think that's the beginning of the end for people when they're trying to become great.
So you only got one chance to do this, to go hire a coach. You haven't had a chance yet to hire an Ozzie or an Eric, really.
Right.
I mean, it's been a very low-key ownership for you. I mean, I was talking today with Kevin Byrne and John. We've had 4 different defensive coordinators in 5 years now. And you come to these owners' meetings, and all of our old coaches are out on the veranda at some point here.
Right.
It's just a whole sea of former Ravens guys. And
I told Jimmy Irsay about an hour ago that there's only 2 weeks left for my return policy on Pagano. If he doesn't give him back in 2 weeks, there is no rebate. He's done. I will not take him back.
Well, I guess from the hiring perspective, you haven't had to do a lot of it, though.
Exactly.
Correct?
Right.
In Ozzie, you inherited him.
Yep.
And what did you know you were getting in him?
Well, I had 4 years as a minority owner to see that I had in him a brilliant mind with a small ego. And those kind of people are the best that you can ever have. Smart and not egotistical. It's a great combination. Talent and humility.
Is there something about him that makes him so special because he played at such a high level? Seeing Elway run Denver, it's very interesting. A couple of those guys want to go do that. We'll get to Ray Lewis later, maybe what he'll do, what he's done. But these guys that played the game like that, to love it that much that they want to aspire to run it.
Sure. Who wouldn't?
A lot of people don't want to, because there's a lot of work involved. It sounds glamorous until Ozzie's job is not glamorous at all.
Marino lasted 3 weeks.
I don't even know if he lasted that long. I thought it was a weekend.
I thought it was awesome. He accepted the job, and then he got in there 3 weeks later. He said, I'm done. This is too hard. There's too much work.
But would a fan see it as that way, you think? You're a fan. I mean, you're a fan of the Terps. You were a fan of the Ravens when you came in from the outside to know what it really takes to do it versus...
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do that job. I wouldn't want to do it. I mean, at this stage in my life, I don't want to work the kind of hours that it takes, nor am I qualified, even if I dedicated myself to 70 hours. I'd become almost more of a hindrance to them than a help, I think. I think that I have a pretty firm idea of what my level of participation should be, and that makes it easy on them. And I always want to contribute. I want them to say he helps us. That's it.
I know you well enough to know sometimes you're like, that's out of my pay grade, that's not my department.
Yeah.
When it comes to football, scouting, and players, and which tight end to take and all that stuff, I don't sense that you have the strongest of strong opinions of that when these guys have been sitting around 24 hours a day watching tape for 6 months.
Exactly. You can't.
Fans love to do that every day. But
you're fighting a losing battle if you start questioning people that have more knowledge than you about subjects. What I do is get involved in the salary cap, and the salary cap is a fluid thing. So I'm not necessarily grinding on how much cap room we have left. I'm talking about personnel moves. I was deep into the discussions to let Derek Mason go and let Todd Heap go and let Kelly Craig go and Willis McGahee, and because we saw that we had young, talented players that we had drafted in Cody and Pitta and Dixon and Torrey Smith and Tandon Doss. So I'm staring at them and I'm saying, if we don't create room, then we'll never know. And I don't want to get to the end of their rookie contract to find out they're great, because that's when they demand all the money. So you have to get them in order to balance your salary cap. You've got to get them out there producing while they're still cheap on their first contract.
What's the difference between good ownership and bad ownership, and as it relates to success on the field for you? That there have been teams.
I've got a couple of my partners.
But there have been New England. I mean, Jimmy Irsay with the Colts, and obviously you have a quarterback, and every coach would tell you that. But then other franchises that struggle, coach every couple years, not just coordinators, running through players, not drafting well. It must be an interesting case study being on the inside of this to wonder why. I know the fans wonder, why do we do it so well, and why does Team X, I can indict any number of teams, why do they continue to struggle?
You need a quarterback and you need good personnel people. That's it.
You make it sound so simple.
It is that simple, because I had the good personnel people, but the Ravens, from the day I got in, were churning quarterbacks, every year. I mean, you remember, we went from, when I got in, Dilford and Gerback to Blake.
Well, Cunningham was in there too.
Randall Cunningham, Jeff Blake,
Anthony Wright,
Kyle Bowler, but Anthony Wright started when Kyle Bowler went down. If you remember, in his rookie year, we were 5-3 when he got hurt in St. Louis.
And Redmond was in there somewhere too.
Redmond was in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Redmond was the third-round draft pick in that draft that we got Jamal, right?
Super Bowl year. It was his rookie year.
My rookie year.
Your rookie year.
Redmond was our third-round draft pick.
It's a lot of quarterbacks.
It's a lot of quarterbacks, and there wasn't sustained winning. And so when we failed enough to get into the early round of the first draft, we were determined to solve that problem. There were only two choices in our mind: either pay up to get Matt Ryan, or to trade out and accumulate more picks and get Joe Flacco.
What was your first thought?
If you love Baltimore sports, you'll love WNST.net.